Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of AI in Action. So today, Dimitri is unavailable. He's out seeing clients on that. I thought today is critical. So, and I talk about critical being critical thinking. Today, we're talking about critical thinking and language skills and why it's important for AI. And I bet you're probably thinking that doesn't make much sense. Although prompt engineering has been a thing that's been around for a little while, but I think the average person, and what's really interesting for me is why critical thinking, language skills is going to be the let's call it the accepted norm going forward. So I'm of the generation where when we were at school and we spoke with our mates, we didn't really do much of the shortened version. So if you think of texting your friend, and all these acronyms, sort of LOL and all those different acronyms that have popped up, and everybody is sort of trying to condense the way they speak. They're trying to shorten their presentations, their emails, their this and that. Where all of a sudden we now have to take a step back, and we got to start thinking about language skills. Your ability to express yourself has now become very, very important. And the ability to have critical thinking around expressing yourself is going to be one of the core skills. And one of the core skills, I think, should be taught at schools, should be something that if you're out of school or out of university and in the working environment, is start looking at how you can do better and more improved critical thinking on the one side and improve your language skills on the other side. Now, why do I say that? Chat and the way we interact with our technology is going to be more and more hinged on our ability to be able to communicate with AI, with the chatbot, with the large language model, with the, let's call it, the proprietary systems or the internal systems that companies will be putting together. So, for instance, let's say I'm a new employee at an entity, and they've got an AI training environment that they've trained their large language model, but they've trained it with their own internal intellectual property. What's happening right now is that there's going to be a shift. There's a lot of time and energy spent on onboarding new employees, for instance. And for me, what's going to happen is the new employees have to be able to display their ability to communicate with AI and to use AI for at least 50, 60, 70% of the onboarding process, where now it goes into that 80-20 principle. So if you would be aware of the 80-20, the Pareto principle, as some people call it, where 20% of your impact comes from 80% of the things, where 80% of your impact comes from 20% of the things. And I think language skills and the ability to do critical thinking sits within the 20%. And the 20% to have an 80% impact, the Pareto principle essentially will be starting to be applied to us as human beings. To get more out of technology, to get more out of your daily day-to-day work, just think about if you've implemented, for instance, Microsoft's Copilot, and you open up your email and you're going to reply to somebody that has just written you an email. What you'll see immediately, if you've implemented your Copilot, it'll say, would you like the Copilot to write the email for you? So what the Copilot will do, it will go and have a look at not only the email you're replying to, but if you've got an email thread, and there are a number of emails, let's say a conversation that's happened, it'll go back and it will then give you a recommendation of how to start structuring the reply email. So obviously it's not going to be perfect because you want to reply in a way that maybe you know and you want to be able to express yourself. But this is where the critical thinking and the language skills comes in, because AI will give you, let's say, a framework to work in. And you might then say, okay, I'm going to just adapt that. So that's fine. So critical thinking kicks in, and you can adapt the email that's been generated or the text that's been generated, or just delete it and start again. But then what you can do is because you got a mastery of language, you got a mastery of the language in which you're communicating with your AI, let's say Copilot in this instance, you're going to be able to prompt Copilot to say, I would like to reply to this email I've just received with these and these answers, or these and these questions, or these and these responses, or with this report, or with whatever it is. So you might have a Word document, an Excel sheet, some kind of copy paste or something from another document, or it might be referencing an article online. It depends on how you want to script it. But let's assume I want to reply to the email in whatever fashion it is. I've got to be able to write a prompt, or at least the first part of what would be the reply email, or what the reply email is about. Critical thinking, language skills, going to come on top of the pile, because if you've got those two mastered, the language skills and the critical thinking, you're going to be able to generate this reply email by simply prompting the Copilot as an example, prompting it in terms of the response you want to give it, or a response you want to give to the email you've received. And then AI will generate that response for you. And it'll more than likely not be 100% correct. At this stage, AI is not generating 100% correct items, but it will give you much closer than just some random question that you've asked, and it just gives us a whole lot of output that doesn't make sense. So people that are complaining that AI hallucinates and AI does this and that, and it doesn't really add any value, I think where they're missing a big mastery trick is critical thinking and language skills. Because the better I can critically think about what it is I'm trying to achieve, number one, and number two, being able to express that in a way that the AI can understand, the output becomes a much higher and higher and higher quality. In addition to that, is the AI will start learning in my manner, my format, in the way I like to express myself. Maybe I'm more serious, I'm more professional, maybe I've got a light-hearted, or I've got maybe a softer, more empathetic voice I would like to use. Now we're talking about the emotion side of things, and about touching the person you're replying back to. It might be, which happens from time to time, and I know this has got people into a lot of trouble, where you get an email and you want to just bang out an angry response, or some kind of quick comeback, because it might have upset or irritated, or you might be annoyed at whoever's written you an email. The beauty about this is that it creates, again, critical thinking and ability to communicate. You could use AI as a way to frame a response that gets a better outcome for you as an individual, because you've used the technology in the right way. So you might initially have a reaction in terms of, I'm annoyed about this. Get the AI to write a nice empathetic, maybe a persuasive, maybe even one that's going to be encouraging email and tone. And when you reply with the factual elements of it, but also in a tone that is more appropriate to get the better outcome, not only for you, but for the person you're engaging with, but also potentially for your organization, for your relationship going forward, or whatever it is, you can use AI as that buffer to make sure that you're always on top of your game, and you're not just making things up. What happens a lot, and you may resonate with this or not, but sometimes if we're annoyed but we're trying to write something nice, it still comes out a little bit, let's call it spicy. But what we want to try and do here is use the power of AI to start helping us with building better relationships, communicate better, to be able to persuade, to convince, to get people on our side and working together. So the critical thinking and language skills are going to come in critical. And I've only just spoken about email as an example. Let's go across into spreadsheets. A lot of people, financial people, people that do prediction and forecasting, people that have to report on, let's call it reports of their teams, of their departments, or even do things like business plans and things for banks or for other financial institutions. Wherever you would use a spreadsheet, again, critical thinking, because you could use a base set of data. Because I've run some tests this last week on Copilot and the way that Microsoft has gone around using Copilot in its different environments. So Copilot for Excel, for instance, has got the ability for you to put in, say, in tab 1, a standard set of data, a tab 2, another lot of data, and tab 3, another lot of data. And then in tab 4, in your Excel spreadsheet, what you could do is you could then say, use tab 1, 2, and 3 and write a report and a summary based on what you find as commonalities or outstanding or outlier points or so on, and present it in a graphical format or present it in a table format, or produce for me in this format, produce for me a particular management accounts or whatever it is. And all of a sudden you can use base data that you bring in maybe from another system or potentially one that you put together yourself, and you can get an output that's 70, 80, 90% there. You then go through, make sure that you're absolutely happy with the output, and then you now have saved an hour, half an hour, 2-3 hours. This morning I had a meeting with the clients of ours, and they are overwhelmed by the amount of time it takes just to generate, say, a consolidated financial report, for instance, where you have multiple entities and you're trying to pull data together to get some kind of management decision that has to be made. But first you have to massage and work with this data. Now, if you've got skills, you've mastered the skills of critical thinking, you've mastered the skills of language, but also you understand how the AI would formulate the answer. Now that comes into critical thinking. You can ask it the right kind of question, that comes into your language skills, for the right kind of output. Ask it a question that it doesn't fully understand or you haven't quite thought through in your critical thinking ability. You're going to get some output there that's going to make no sense to you, and you're going to blame who or what. You're going to blame the AI. And I think we have to start saying, as human beings, I think one of the things that it's highlighting to me is that when we have these AI conversations with a lot of our clients and prospective clients, we're having these conversations and we're saying, maybe it's time to upskill ourselves. Maybe it's time to start thinking in a critical way and start thinking in a language skill. Let's get back to basics, having those language skills to be able to communicate properly. So nuances are not necessarily going to be picked up. So if you in a, let's say, a long-term relationship with somebody, sometimes things don't need to be said. AI is not going to pick that up. We assume somebody understands what we're saying, but because we've got almost a little bit lazy, a bit complacent, we're not getting that feedback. Now AI is forcing us to do the feedback. It's saying, here is my output. What do you think? Is this okay? Is this good? Is this in line with what you were thinking? Or is this nowhere close to? Do you want me to regenerate the output? And I'm talking here about generative AI. But in terms of critical thinking and in language skills, it's going to become more and more and more important. Let's say in a sales role, I'm having a meeting with a potential prospect, and I've taken the recording and I've taken the transcript. And the transcript is pretty much our conversation, and I put it through a proposal AI, which is, let's call it a use case. And proposal AI, for instance, or let's say I'm a practitioner, I'm a doctor, I'm some kind of a lawyer or legal expert, or I'm in the private equity space and I've had a conversation with a seller of a business. Whatever the transcript is, whatever that is, whether it's an analysis or a discussion with a patient or with a client or whatever it is, but let's say it's a proposal. So you need to make a proposal or a recommendation for next steps, like what are the actions that have to be taken. So if you've trained your proposal AI in a way that has got all the templates, so it's going to generate, for instance, an outline of the right kind of format. So you've got your headers, you've got your footers, you've got specific fonts, paragraphs, table of contents, whatever that is, potentially even pulling in diagrams, graphics, and etc., or tables, and using the transcript to feed your proposal AI or your, let's call it next steps proposal, or changes, suggestions, etc., in your report. So the ability for us to take the transcript and then to add in our view of, let's call it an overview or summary of the transcript. So let's say I have a conversation. It's a 60-minute conversation, so I've got quite a long transcript. A lot of the let's call it the rapport building, the greeting, the hello, goodbye, how's the weather, that kind of thing, that can be ignored. When it comes to, okay, tell us a bit about your situation. What are the pain points? What are the issues we have to deal with? If you're a patient, tell me what you're experiencing. When did it start, etc. So there are a whole lot of questions that have to be asked. Again, critical thinking, language skills. Because if your transcript is not very good, if your output from the transcript, I'm just talking here about taking your words, putting it into a written format, and making sure that the written format has got a really good set of initial data. When you put that into AI, what we then want to do is have the output, let's say in the format as I discussed, in the way that we want, but that the information inside the proposal is related to all the pain points and things that we discussed. But if we didn't ask use those communication skills and ask the right questions that went into the transcript in the first place, we are not going to get a great output in our proposal AI, our report, or whatever it is we're trying to generate. And a way especially with a proposal AI that we have, what you want to do is potentially even record a second transcript, just like lawyers would do. They would consult with their clients, and then they would do a transcript as in what the response is, how to deal with it, whatever it is. And then whoever their assistant is would then take that and work with it. Think about AI as your assistant. So now I've got this transcript. I've asked really good questions. I've used critical thinking in terms of what is the output, because I've got to be thinking about the outcome, the result at the end of it. If I think about what the result is I'm trying to achieve, then I'm going to ask better questions. If I'm critically thinking about what it is I'm trying to do, I will be able to ask better questions. So better questions, better results, better interrogation, making sure we do what we always been taught to do. We're having 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we listen twice as much as what we speak. And I think that same concept, the old school things, principles that we learned years ago, are coming back. Is having that conversation, being able to listen, being able to extract the right kind of input. That goes into the AI. Then you do a summary. You come in with a summary and you say, okay, what is it that we're missing? What are some of the recommendations we can be giving? Now you can use your human expertise, your critical thinking skills to input further data, a further transcript into the AI. So now you've got the conversation, you've got your overview data that's gone in, and then by using good communication skills, we can then type in decent prompt to get the output in terms of what we want. So if we've got a pre-trained a proposal AI, for instance, and we've pre-trained it on a lot of our products and services and pricing and so on. So let's say I'm doing a sales proposal. I've got use cases, examples, testimonials, all that's been pre-trained. But still, I need to make sure that I'm presenting the right information to my prospect in the manner in which we think the prospect would resonate with the most. If I'm trying to do a sale, if it's a patient, what actions they need to take, or if it's a patient, maybe there's another department that needs clearer instructions in terms of, let's say there's an analysis or a lab or some kind of MRI or other test that has to be taken. So when we're busy with the output then becomes critical to make sure that we have our input. Remember the garbage in, garbage out principle. Garbage in is going to make sure that we don't have the right output. But if we are now much more attuned to asking better questions, to critically think through what the outcome is we're trying to achieve, the proposals, the recommendations, the reports at the end of it will come out far higher quality. So to get the most out of your AI, one of the key skills, my message today to you is critical thinking and language skills. If in any way you got a doubt and you are wondering why you're not getting the most out of your AI environment, and I haven't even touched on things like presentations, and I'm going to come back to Microsoft Copilot as an example. If you got Copilot installed in your PowerPoint, you can get AI to generate an entire PowerPoint presentation for you, but you got to feed in the information you want to talk about, because it's not just going to randomly just guess what you want to talk about. But you might use initial information that's quite general, and then start applying your critical thinking, your communication skills into the presentation, and get the AI to even format the presentation in the sequence that makes sense for an audience if you're trying to convince them. I've even tried in this last week, I've tried to apply storytelling tactics and methodologies into my PowerPoints. So for example, if I'm trying to present some kind of software solution, some kind of a business strategy solution, whatever it is, if I could get to a point where I know what it is I want to share, but I need a few stories to really emphasize and to make that impact, but I'm struggling to build up those stories. If I'm able to do the critical thinking, what is the outcome I'm looking for, and what is the communication skill, now the PowerPoint can generate for me an output that is far closer to a best practice, as opposed to me trying to think, okay, formatting, which bullet point sits where, when do I start my story, when do I end it, what are the impact points, and so on. AI can help you with a lot of that, but again, you've got to be asking it the right questions. So, and I've covered Excel, I've covered PowerPoint sort of presentations, emails, Word documents are the same. I mean, if you're working in the Google suite, you've got the Gemini, which is now becoming going all over the place. You've got a really good LLM these days is Anthropic, the Claude AI. It's really good with document and processing and creating really strong, I would say, strong outputs in terms of let's call it more research and the ability to express itself in a more of a bachelor level, PhD level type of thing. Or you could go down into more, let's call it more simpler language, but with a lot of power. So Claude is very good with that. You've got Perplexity, which is another one. You've got obviously Gemini. You've got the Microsoft version. You've got ChatGPT, which is being used a lot, and there are a lot of GPTs being built in now that are pre-trained to a certain extent, and you can pre-train your GPT, adding in information prior to you even starting your prompting. But it does take a bit of planning. And again, I'm going to come back to critical thinking, communication skills. Think about that. Think about those skills, those language skills that you thought were no longer that necessary. You probably just getting by, communicating at whatever level you've been communicating. But if you truly want to harness the power of AI, start mastering those two skills, critical thinking and your language skills. That's my message for today. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Have a fantastic week and weekend, and we'll speak to you on our next podcast. This is Dudley Peacock, and this is AI in Action. Goodbye.